Welcome back to the Tiberian Penguin. This is Mike. Today I want to talk to you about what G.I. Joe classified figures need to get remade with the retro treatment. Now, these are the 8. And this picture is provided by TNI News. It's a little something they put together, which is fantastic. But we are going to see these 8 in retro only, and it's over. But we have a new step in a new direction with Hasbro. With this new step in this new direction, we have a Firefly reveal. And this is a more classic retro style Firefly than what we saw before. We're going to dig into this guy. Then I'm going to tell you the ones that I'd like to see get remade coming up. Okay, starting out, what's the big deal about this Firefly? Well, first of all, the left is what we got with the Cobra Island Target exclusive, and it had some sort of crazy vest on it, a lot of stuff going on there. And then on the right is what's a render of what we're gonna get. And why it's such a big deal is because it's getting the classic treatment, it's looking more retro, and I personally did not care much for the original one that they put out. And they can never put it out again theoretically because it is tied to Target with the Cobra Island line. And so let's just go ahead and put out this classic one, which makes a lot of sense. I do like the look or prefer the look of this classic one, so I will be picking it up. And I have never even opened that one. I actually have a Fortnite one in place because I think this one looks that far off from the character for me. It doesn't match the character enough for me. They made a Fortnite character that looks closer to Firefly. So I'm excited for this. You can look at this side by side. You can see the future of this. So what else can they do past those 8 retro figures and do it in this style where it's still part of the main line? Let's go on to the next one. I think the next most obvious one would be Major Bludd. The reason about Major Bludd is because of the fact that he looks good. He looks good. I'm not saying he's a bad figure, but he's a candidate for a more retro style figure. Okay, so same thing as with the Firefly. We have the original one that is a Cobra Island and is tied to Target. It's not going to get released again as Cobra Island, so it will get released as something else. It gives them an excuse to release another one. But if you look at them side by side, it's a good looking figure, but it's not very tuned. So those of us that want the figure that's already out can get it, although it's pushing $50 on eBay now. And those of us who want a more cartoon-inspired one can get one on the left. I really think this would be a great option, a great opportunity, and they really wouldn't have to change much other than a lighter brown for the bodysuit and all that kind of stuff, and then the chest plate and the armor would be a much brighter silver versus what they got going on. I'm not saying this is a bad figure. I'm saying this is an opportunity, and to get a retro version that matches the cartoon would make me very excited. So the next one I want to talk about is Duke, and I've got to say that the left one is the original, the right one is the redone version to make it look slightly more toon accurate, I guess you could say. And I want to say that when this came out, it was one of the better looking figures, in my opinion, closer to the show. But I never really liked the head sculpt. I thought the head sculpt was a bit off. And, I just kept saying, well, they're just trying to make it look different than the original. They're trying to miss the mark on purpose. That's kind of my feeling with G.I. Joe Classified, the first wave. They're going out of their way to miss the mark on purpose. But now, all of the modern figures are hitting that mark. And this guy doesn't anymore. So this guy no longer fits in and matches as well as he did. But now it's painstakingly obvious with what we see from Super 7. So comparing Super 7 to what we had before with the Duke, I gotta say Super 7's blowing it out of the water. It looks so much more like what I would want and more retro. And, at the end of the day, they really don't even need to change their design. They can leave the real world stuff in there as to where Super 7 has it smooth and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be 100% cartoon like Super 7 did, but they could change the face a little bit for me, change the hair color, a few things, the pant color and all of that, and just make it look more retro. It's a possibility, something I think that should happen, but at this point, I'm really seriously thinking about boxing up one at a time all of my classifieds as the Super 7s arrive, because they're hitting the mark better than classified. Alright, so next up is Scarlett, and I would have to say this one, out of every figure I talk about today, needs this retro treatment the most. The very last one needs it the most, but there's a caveat to that, so we'll get into that one. But she needs it the most. I really did not like this. I remember when Classified first started, and I saw her on the shelf, then I left her, and then I saw her again, and I left her, and then I said, you know what? I'm going to wish I picked her up, so I picked her up. Reluctantly, but then they went off and they redid her a little bit, and tried to make her look a little bit more, I guess, Generation 1, Vintage, Retro, Version 1, whatever. But they didn't. They missed the mark, and I think that they missed the mark even more because they were trying and they didn't hit the mark. See, before they weren't going for that. They were going for the video game. They were going for a Fortnite kind of deal. They were not going for the original Real American Hero cartoon. And with that, I was disappointed in the second one more than the first one because the second one was supposed to give us what we wanted and it didn't. So at this point, just give us a whole new figure. It would be fantastic. I don't care if they base it off Lady J or Baroness or whatever. Or get rid of that silly shoulder pad and all that kind of stuff. Make her look very retro. At first, Hasbro wasn't worried about giving collectors what they wanted. They gave them what they wanted to give collectors. They didn't give collectors what collectors wanted. Now, we pretty much want this. Now, I know I do. There's others out there that really prefer this. So let's get into that. So there's inevitably going to be people saying, you know, I like that Scarlett. That's the best looking Scarlett I've ever seen. Well, cool. You have that Scarlett. But now, going forward, why don't we get one that matches the aesthetic and what Scarlett looks like in my mind? And I know what you're going to say. Go get the Kotobukiya statue. But I don't collect statues. But the Kotobukiya statue definitely blows away what they've done in Classified because it looks a lot more like the original, but still doesn't quite beat what we're going to get from Super 7. So at this point, it seems like Super 7's nailing it, and G.I. Joe Classified could, but chooses not to. That's really where we're at. So this is my pet peeve, is that I was unable to get this SDCC exclusive, and I wasn't willing to pay the $100 that the secondary market was requiring. Scalpers. Now it's like auctions are at 105, and they still have days left to go, so I would like to see them reissue this, but they probably won't. There's just no chance. Maybe that's a smart move for them to have artificial scarcity on a handful of figures so that it keeps people interested, or it makes 30% of the collectors quit. I don't know. Either way, I would like to see this get reissued, and I would buy it. I would definitely buy it if they reissued it. But we do have the retro one coming, and the more I looked at the retro one, the more I realized it is closer to the cartoon, closer to what we had. Still not perfect. Still far from perfect. That's too bright of a blue, and the gray's not bright enough gray, and there you could nitpick it back and forth, but it's still pretty close, and I'll just be happy and accept it. But the original figure wasn't bad, but had I known there were going to be 3 different versions of Zartan, then I probably wouldn't have gone in so heavy on the first one and just waited for these. Next on my list, it's a small one, but I would like to see a more retro style of Stalker. And the thing about that is that I've got them, and I don't even want to open them, but I can see them through the package still, so I mean, I can still enjoy them, but I feel like his colors are a little bit too muted. Now, I found the brightest color, the most light on this figure next to the original Stalker, and I just still don't think that the green is a bright enough green. I would like to see a brighter green, a better version of this. I know a lot of people do love the muted, and hey, this is what more realistic, this is more what it should look like, but I still would like the brighter green. I mean, in my mind, I feel like Stalker's out of place because that weird green that he's got going on doesn't match, and I would much rather have him in his original color or closer to it. Doesn't have to match it exactly, but a little bit brighter on the brighter green. Not quite into the 90s neon or anything, but it's my personal preference. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me. Okay, so the top of my list here is Cobra Commander. We've got to get a better Cobra Commander. And yes, I know there's one coming with his tank. I will talk about that. But I do want to get this out of my system. I've never liked this Cobra Commander from day one. And lucky for me, he was the peg warmer of the decade. So I was able to get him. I had opportunity for like 2 straight years to get him. And as cheap as like $10 at one place. So that was okay. But I still don't like the figure. I mean, even if you get them cheap, doesn't mean you like the figure. You just got them cheap. The Regal version was a mess. It was a mess trying to get your hands on it, and nobody really knew what was going on, and whether or not Regal was going to be a repaint. And in fact, we didn't even see a good, solid color picture difference. It was too dark of a picture, so you really couldn't tell the differences. Now here, side by side, you can obviously tell the difference between the Regal version and the standard version, and the Regal version does look a little bit better. But it's still not classic, and we would expect to get a classic remake. In comes the pack-in Cobra Commander that's going to be coming with his tank. Now, everybody would say, okay, well, we expect to get one that's not a Mickey Mouse, that has a standard Cobra emblem on his chest, and maybe less accessories or something, who knows. But it hasn't been announced yet, and until it's announced, it's still going to be on lists like this, and it needs to be on lists like this. In fact, it's at the top of the list, especially when you have Super 7 just dominating and making it look like Classified is missing the mark, especially on this guy. Not on every character, but on this guy. So with that, they really need to bring their A game and let a standard distribution of a standard figure come out. Alright, so we're just going to kind of show that actually Super 7 is doing a great job. There's the one on the left. It looks great. The one they're going to put out with his tank looks very nice also. But it's going to be in retro packaging, so it's not like it's something that you could open up and close back up. That's one of those things I'm hearing it's going to be retro packaging. So with that, and look, they both sort of hit the aesthetic well. I still think Super 7 is closer to cartoon, but Classified isn't 100% cartoon, even though they're going closer and more inspired by, they still are a little bit more real world than what Super 7's doing. So they're doing different things, they're going for different things, but Hasbro and Classified needs to make this character a mainline one. Until they do, I'm going to keep talking about it. So, do you think we need retro versions of this? Are you happy with the ones we already got that sort of don't match the new direction? Would you like to see new ones that match the new direction? Would you like to see new numbers on them? Would you like them to come out in the old numbers? Let me know in the comments below. Would you like to forget all about remaking any of them and just go on to new characters so that we can hit all 315 finished characters? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Hanger out.